Hi students, thanks for finding this video. My name is Mrs. Bogus. I'm your Algebra 1 teacher. I'm sorry that for those of you that are in person today that I am not with you, but I will be back on Monday. Today we are going to continue working on exponential functions. So if you don't already, make sure that you have one of these green workbooks. They should be available near the front of the room for you. And today we are going to be working on lesson 3. I'm going to walk you through some examples and have you fill them out as well. Every day I like to start class with a calendar, so here is a calendar of where we are at. Today is Thursday, January 29th, and you have a body of evidence today in class as well as working through some of these lessons. Our unit test will be next Friday, February 5th. So today, while I'm gone, there are some things that I would like you to get done. There are things for today and then some things for tomorrow as well. So today, you're going to be working on lesson 3. You've found this video, 2 thumbs up. You are going to fill out your notes. They looked just like what is on the video. And then through Canvas, there is body of evidence number 1 that I'd like you to take. And then practice 5B number 1. And both of those are available to you on Canvas. And those will be your attendance for me today. Tomorrow, there is a Desmos activity that I am going to link through Canvas that'll be available to you on exponential functions. And there will be an additional practice on Canvas. Completion of both of these tomorrow will be your attendance to me. And the Canvas practice will not be open until tomorrow, so you can't just get it done today. Let's refresh what we have talked about in class so far with the idea of linear versus exponential. So over the past 2 days, we have talked about what makes a linear function and what makes an exponential function. Remember that a linear function is one in which we add or subtract, and it has something called a common difference. So for example, when we did the Gini problem, we were adding $200 each day, so it had a difference of $200 from day to day. An exponential function is one in which we are multiplying or dividing to get our next term. That has something called a common factor. So the common factor, again, going back to the Gini problem, was when our money was doubling every day. So we were doubling, we were multiplying by 2. I'd like you to find in your notes where it says lesson 3. I believe the top of it says something like exponent rules, but we're not going to work through that. We're going to start actually about halfway through the page with multiplying microbes. In a biology lab, 500 bacteria reproduce by splitting. Every hour, on the hour, each bacterium, which is a single little organism, splits into 2. So we're going to complete this table and write an expression to show how to find the number of bacteria after each hour. So here's the table that you have on your notes. We can see that originally at the first hour we had 500 bacteria. The information is telling us that every hour our bacteria splits and becomes 2 bacteria. So what was 500 now splits and becomes 1,000. And then on our next hour, we have 1,000 and it will split and become 2,000. And this pattern is continuing on. 2,000 times 2 becomes 4,000. But then you can see that it says the 6th hour. And so that is not going to be 8,000. We're going to have to multiply that again and again and again. And so since we're skipping over, it might be helpful if we had an expression for any hour. And so our expression would be that we would have our previous output, whatever that is, and we'll multiply it by 2. That would give us our number of bacteria. So that would be the answer to number 2 on your notes where it says describe in words. We're taking our previous output and we're multiplying it by 2. So is the growth of our bacteria characterized by a common difference or by a common factor? Are we multiplying by the same number each time, or are we adding or subtracting? In this situation, we have a common factor. We are multiplying by 2 each time. So this gets into talking about the parts of exponential functions. You can find this on the top of the back page. In an exponential function, which is what our whole unit is about, we're going to be using the format a times b to the power of x. Part of your learning is going to be given a situation and be able to write an equation like this. A is always going to be our initial value or our starting value. B is going to be how our function is changing, our growth factor or our decay factor. If our exponential function is growing, if it's getting larger, we would say that it has a growth factor. And if our function is getting smaller, there would be a decay factor. In our bacteria example, 500, was the initial value, and 2 is the growth factor. That means that our equation to represent the exponential or represent this would be 500 times 2 to the power of x. So this could be something you would write on the bottom of the first page under number 3. At any time, if you need to stop the video, please do. So you try. In the equation, p equals 100 times 3 to the power of t. 100 is what, and 3 is what? I'll give you a moment to figure that out. You can pause the video if you need to. So 100 is the initial value, and 3 is the growth factor. Why don't you now try to write an equation with an initial value of 5 and a growth factor of 4. Your equation should look like this. Y is equal to 5 times 4 to the power of x. Now let's see what this looks like when we graph. So we're going to be graphing b is equal to 500 times 3 to the power of t. Sometimes in math, we interchange these variables. So this is also the same as saying y is equal to 500 times 3 to the power of x. I like to use a table to help me with my graphs. So I'm going to use the inputs 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I know from my graph that from my equation that this 500 is going to be my initial value. That's going to be where I'm starting my graph. So I'm starting at 500. And then the 3, I'll use green here. 3 is telling me that from output to output, I'm multiplying everything by 3. So this will be 500 times 3. That gives me 1,500. Again, times 3. That gives me 4,500. Again, times 3, that's going to give me 1,000, or 13,000, 500. So this is getting very large very quick. So now I'm going to plot these points on my graph. At 0, 500, that's my first point. At 1, I'm at 1,500. At 2, I'm at 4,500. Dang it, some of them went away. And again, this is not a very good looking graph because I'm writing it with a little stylus. So I'll connect these points. And there's my graph. So our graph kind of looks like this, right? This one looks a little bit different because the scale is different. But let's talk about on this graph, where do we see the initial value? From our equation, our initial value is 500, and we see 500 as the y-intercept. That's where our graph is starting. That is our y value when x is equal to 0. What about where do we see the growth factor from the equation? How does that present itself in the graph? Well, we go from 500 to 1,500, from 1,500 to 4,500, so we are multiplying each output by 3. So that's the connection between the graph and the equation. Your turn. Why don't you try to graph the other equation that's on your notes, And pause the video so you can do that, and unpause to see the answer. Okay, here is the graph that you should get. We're starting with 100 times 3 to the power of t. We know that 100 is our initial value. That's where our graph is starting. And the times 3, just like in the equation before, is telling us that we are increasing by a factor of 3. 100 becomes 300, 300 becomes 900, 900 is now becoming 2,700. Sorry, I had to think about that. I was like, is my scale the right way? Yikes. Okay, our last little bit of work here is to do the check your understanding that is on the top of the page. We're talking about a bee population. And I want you to pause the video, as always, and then unpause it if you need to find the answers. So give you about 5 seconds to pause, and then I'll go through the answers. Okay, we're talking about a bee population, and we measure the population each week, and the results are plotted on this graph here. We have number of weeks on the x-axis and bee population on the y-axis. So what is the bee population when it is first measured? What is our initial value here? And our initial value, and that is the answer right there that just showed up that I did not want to show you. Our initial value is going to be right here at 500. That is the first dot that we see. That is the y value when x is 0. Is the bee population growing by the same factor each week? Yes, it is. We go from 500 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 2,000, so it's going up by a factor of 2, right? It's doubling. So then C, which I already gave you the answer to, is what is an equation that models the bee population? B, W weeks after it is first measured. And that can be seen right here. It's B, or you could have had Y, is equal to 500 times 2 to the power of W. So every week, our population is doubling. So that is our learning for today. On Canvas, you can see that there is body of evidence number 1. It is open and ready for you to do it. And practice 5B. Both of those will be your attendance to me, how I know that you have participated and been in class today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all on Monday. Don't forget that you are responsible for some work tomorrow, and those links will be live in Canvas. Have a good one.